Hello everybody, and welcome to today's webinar entitled How an Energy Company Used iPads to Solve the Safety Issue for Field Workers. My name is Jeff Scheffler. I'm the Director of Marketing at Colligo. And for the next 15 to 30 minutes, we will present a case study example on how a leading oil and gas company used iPads to address this issue. Colligo is a business-critical SharePoint partner, and we're proud to share insights from working with over 5,000 companies globally who use our applications to increase productivity, foster collaboration, and improve compliance. I wanted to start with some information on who's on the call today. As you can see by this chart, I just wanted to share a little bit of the type of people and what they're interested in. Now, this chart is a summary of data. We asked a question to everyone who registered for today's webinar. And the question was, what stage is your organization in developing a mobile SharePoint strategy? In the bottom right-hand corner in blue, overwhelmingly 70% of you who registered selected, we are currently in development of a mobile strategy for SharePoint. The next slide gives you also some insight into the types of audience members. 80% are from companies labeled energy, chemical, and utilities industry. And the majority of companies are between 500 to 1,000 employees. We have seen a few people who have registered of companies between 100 and 150, and even some that are 5,000 to 10,000. It's good for us to know for today's session because what it helps us do is it crafts that content to address these issues and things that you're looking for in a SharePoint solution for mobility. The last piece I wanted to highlight is the types of roles of people. The majority are managers. These are project managers, MIS managers, records and information manager, or leads like a SharePoint technology lead. And finally, analysts, senior computer analysts. These tend to make up the majority of people who are on the call today. But again, what we've tried to do is tailor the content for you and the audience today. So please feel free to ask questions. There's a box in the right-hand corner if you like, to ask whatever you like. And you get a sense of the kind of peers in the audience as well, so that the types of questions you can ask, feel free to pose them to us. We've set up some time at the end of the session to go through those. Today's presenter is Rick Ramsey. He's our Senior Product Manager for Mobile Applications at Colligo. Rick has nearly a decade in the enterprise space. And in this webinar, you'll learn how a leading energy company, North Power, used SharePoint and iPads to provide a solution for field workers to access documents in remote areas even when offline. Rick's going to walk you through the process and how North Power addressed their vision, key challenges in the 5 areas to develop a mobile SharePoint strategy that ultimately led to their decision. We wanted to give this as an opportunity for you to go behind the scenes on how we worked with this client. Now, I'm going to turn it over to Rick to introduce North Power.
Thanks, Jeff. Really excited to be able to talk about North Power today. They're really one of our great customers, and what they were able to achieve with our products was really a huge boon for the company and a really a great success story. So excited to talk about that this morning. If you could just flip to the next slide there. Thanks. So just a bit of background on who North Power is. So they have about 1,200 employees. They're the largest multi-utility contractor servicing New Zealand and Australia. They're winners of the Electrical Engineers Association Workplace Safety Award. Safety is really deep in their culture. It's critical to every decision they make and fundamental to their approach to all new projects. And they back that up with a culture of excellence and innovation. So they're always looking for the ways they can improve their processes and things they can do to really excel. Within that group of 1,200 employees, they have hundreds of field workers, and those are distributed across rural and urban areas, across really a gigantic geographic region. They have offices throughout New Zealand, into Perth and Melbourne, servicing a really large area with those field workers. So when they came to us, they had a pretty simple vision. So we worked with the business systems analyst there, Mike Wright, and his vision was pretty straightforward. He needed a solution that ensured his field workers had the latest content, even in remote areas where there was no connectivity. So it had a certain elegant simplicity to it when we started out the project. And as we dug into the process with them, we really identified 4 key areas. And that was part of an in-depth evaluation with them of all their current systems and current processes to see how we could approach this with a really breakthrough solution to help them excel at innovating with a new safe solution. Within that, we started those 4 key areas. So the first one was really looking at safety and efficiency. So again, I really can't stress how critical that is to their organization and how fundamental they see that as their approach. Amongst those field workers, they have a highly skilled group performing a broad range of advanced tasks. And those people really need the right information at the right time in the right place to do their jobs safely and efficiently. Being on site with incorrect and out-of-date materials is a huge safety risk, and it's also a liability risk for the company. And that safety piece was really key driver for everything else and was really that key starting point. The second key area we spent some time evaluating with them was the critical nature of that content. And that content was really reviewed to look for any unique problems it might pose and how that might inform a solution we were able to deliver for them. And that content included standards, drawings, procedures, as well as health and safety bulletins and information. And they were really driving that prior to the new solution with a legacy system of papers and binders. And so we really looked in depth at how that was working currently. And across those hundreds of field workers performing a variety of activities, they really had a broad base of customers and sites, so it really is a tremendous amount of content. Next up, the area we looked at them for that third piece of the evaluation process was how we would address adoption, retention, and engagement. And I think everyone online knows that's critical to any project. You need to make sure there's great buy-in and adoption. And this was a key area of focus for this project because we were really changing fundamentally how people worked and how people had worked for a really long time, moving them away from that legacy system of papers and binders, but we also needed to make sure they transitioned quickly without issues and ensure that they really adopted the new system since it was so critical to that safety of those field workers. The fourth area that we identified in the evaluation process with North Power was how to handle an update to change process and compliance. So obviously the paper-based system being highly distributed and highly manual had really issues you would expect with ensuring that new changes and new content made it out to all those binders in the right way. And the content changes fast and the changes can be critical. So changing things like site layouts and safety standards need to be right. So in the evaluation process, we evaluated that we really need to find a back end that allowed them to have a change process that was easy, digital, and verifiable. And related to that, measuring compliance became key as well. They really needed a way, when moving to a digital solution, to reduce risk and liability by being able to know exactly what content was on site. And that became a really essential part of the project as it evolved. As we went through that evaluation process and worked through those four key areas with them, we really identified three key challenges that related to it that we really need to keep our focus on as we move towards a solution. The first of those are the tough conditions. And I highlighted this early on. Those hundreds of field workers are spread out over a really broad and diverse region. So that involves incredibly rural areas and areas with no connectivity. And you're also looking at a group of people whose office is their truck. So they had a definite need for something lightweight, portable, and ruggedized. And those sites with no connectivity or really limited connectivity posed a really unique challenge to the project, as they really needed a way to make sure that when they were on site, they had all that content offline and weren't relying on any online connectivity. The next key challenge that was identified was working around ease of use. Seems a bit overly simplistic to state, but it really had to be as easy to use as reading a binder. And we really needed to address a broad skill set amongst a broad group of field workers with a broad age range and broad exposure to technology. So we needed to ensure that what was really a complex and large data set of content could be easily managed centrally while also being really easy to use for those end users. So they could rapidly find exactly the content they needed and didn't need a lot of training, and was really key that they didn't have to do any setup or management on an ongoing basis. As new stuff came out or new materials came out that they were aware of, it was critical that they not have to do anything to get access to that content. Third for the key challenges goes back again to the right content in the right place. So the size of that region, the huge base of customers and technologies and sites they're working on really drove the fact that they needed to have a way to ensure that they got exactly the right content in the right place. So our process with North Power of really that in-depth evaluation in those four key areas led into flagging those three key challenges, and we really combined all that into defining a goal for North Power. And that goal really evolved from selection of SharePoint as their back end. And that was a pretty logical selection for them because it was an on-site resource they already had in place. They already had policies and people in place to manage it. So it essentially offered a solution to address this problem on the back end with little to no incremental investment there. SharePoint also gave them support for really powerful workflows and advanced metadata to help them structure and manage this incredibly complex and large library of documents. But then mobilizing that SharePoint backend was where Colligo came in, and we came to them to address that goal of a comprehensive mobile strategy to mobilize SharePoint and meet their challenges for connectivity, security, and ease of use. And part of that comes down to defining that mobile strategy and how we met that goal. So I want to go through some general recommendations on building out a mobile strategy for SharePoint. First up, document the use cases. And I think for everyone out there, you guys work on a variety of projects. I'm sure you've heard this mantra before, but fundamental to any strategy and any approach is to first figure out who is using it, why they're using it, and how they're going to use it. And that was really critical to the North Power project as well. But this is also the time in any mobile strategy when you really need to think about what other use cases are next in line for your company for mobile content. So beyond just field workers, think about other places where centrally managed content libraries could add value. We have customers doing great things around paperless board meetings, managing complex libraries of sales collateral, or anywhere you need to get content securely out to mobile workers. Even team collaboration and productivity is another key area to look at. If you have workers that don't just need to consume content on mobile, but securely edit, collaborate, and distribute, even annotations and markup and things like reviewing PDFs or contracts for a legal department can be a great place to start your focus for a really critical mobile content use case. So really start thinking about where else can you reduce paper, increase security, collaboration, and productivity in your organization by mobilizing that SharePoint asset. And in each case, be sure to define exactly who, their background, training, and education, what they're going to be doing with that mobile content, and why. And obviously driving that why is key to pushing through and measuring the ROI of that. And then also keep a focus on what's really going to delight those people. How are you going to make their jobs better with this technology and this approach, and how are you going to add value to their day-to-day job? The second piece is really looking at devices. So what used to be a simple decision, device selection is becoming increasingly complex. Starting with your device strategy defines all other elements of your strategy, from security partners to vendor partners to support needs to how you can deploy and manage these things. For North Power, the iPad was a perfect fit. They obviously needed something paper-sized to look at large and complex documents and drawings, but they also needed something that had a broad ecosystem around it for ruggedization, services, and support. So the iPad offered them those things, and they have some really great solutions that they can use for ruggedization from cases, and we were able to work with them with some different vendors to find just the kinds of things they need. Another critical part of device selection is looking at storage capacity. So offline synchronization that's sort of critical to an effective mobile SharePoint strategy means that you need to plan for capacity on those devices. And don't just think of capacity today, think of, as these libraries grow over time through the lifetime of the device, what's the capacity I'm going to need down the road? And again, just stressing, that ruggedization and service piece is really critical. So you need to look at, whatever device you're selecting has the right ecosystem surrounding it to fully support your needs. Third is clearly looking at security controls. So mobile security is a key topic that I'm sure everybody on the call today is already monitoring closely. You need to look both at what security features an application vendor provides, but also what you need from your EMM partner. Enterprise mobility management is a really exciting space, and it's evolving quite rapidly, but you need to ensure your enterprise mobility management partner and your independent software vendor are working well together. And within that rapidly changing space for enterprise mobility management, people are doing some really exciting things with merging mobile device management and the newer concept of mobile application management to offer a really rich set of features. Everything from limiting applications that are installed to centrally provisioning applications to enforcing security controls, whether at the app level or device level. So I think it'd be interesting to do a quick poll of everyone out there today and just see which enterprise mobility management or mobile device management vendor you're currently working with.
Okay, so I'm going to launch a poll here. Can you guys see it? Yeah?
And yeah, just everyone can type that in. I think it'd be great to see what results we get back, and then we'll share those out to the team.
Okay, we'll give a minute while everyone's responding. As well as this time, I'll just remind everybody, submit any comments you have as Rick's been going through the content. Is there anything from your perspective that you see that you want to ask about? We're also going to give some time to show the solution later on.
All right, I think we can close that poll out and then just share the results with everybody. I think that's some interesting data there for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you look through there, certainly what we're seeing as well from our customer base with AirWatch and Citrix being prominent out there, but the good category, the good is strong as well. The other piece is sort of key within that EMM, MDM space because it is pretty rapidly changing out there, so it's certainly interesting to see that it's not just market leaders alone out there in use. So,
okay, so we'll hide the poll, and we have a couple other questions to go through later.
So the other piece to think about for that security portion of a mobile strategy is data encryption and security. So fairly obvious point, I think, but mobile devices are easily lost and stolen. And so how will you ensure the data stays safe? So you want to make sure you're talking with your EMM vendors and your software vendors about how they're encrypting the data, what happens if a device is lost or stolen, do you have a wiping capability for that, and how do you handle if the device is jailbroken? The final security topic there is really making sure you've thoroughly thought through identity and authentication. How are you going to manage credentials and identification? And certainly in the field worker use case, that can pose a unique challenge because these may not be workers that even have network credentials already. And you're going to have to work on provisioning those identities and managing those for a group that may have higher turnover than some of your other departments. Next up on the mobile checklist is really thinking about network connectivity. So again, makes sense, but how will they get the content? So we got to look at the networking needs. So cellular or Wi-Fi connectivity, that's obviously a device decision, but still critical to weigh carefully from a cost perspective. But the other critical decision is how you'll establish connectivity to the corporate network. So VPNs are the most obvious solution and something pretty much everyone's going to have in-house already. But that brings some risk that the VPN is really open to all the apps on the device. iOS 7 brought some really neat stuff for the enterprise here, where they brought in a per-app VPN feature, and that allows you to use your MDM to limit VPN access to individual apps when you're going through the configuration and deployment of those apps. MAM, or that mobile application management piece, is also really bringing some exciting changes here, where those vendors are bringing in per-app tunneling that forms an encrypted proxy back to an on-premise resource and provides tremendous control of how apps get to on-prem resources. Technologies like this are the Good Dynamics suite, Mobile Iron's app tunneling, and even newer entrants like Bitzer with their containerization approach. So a lot of really interesting stuff happening on that side of the mobile security piece. It's also key to think about what happens when your users are offline or have poor connectivity. Mobility and connectivity aren't the same thing. Just think of any time you've been on a plane in a rural area, roaming outside your country, and watching that bill carefully, obviously. You need to plan for all those network connectivity possibilities and ensuring that they have a way to sync the content offline so that wherever they are, they have access to that content. The last piece for the checklist for that mobile strategy that we recommend is really digging into what supports you're going to get from your vendors. So SharePoint is a really powerful but complex platform, and where we find we can add tremendous value for successful deployments is on that support and services piece. So you really want to be working with your vendors to make sure that they're really able to back that product up with a strong support offering. You want to make sure your vendors are broadly partnered within the mobile ecosystem, so your EMM, MDM, or MAM vendor of choice, and not just for who you might be using today, but who you might move to next. It's a really fast-moving space. The SharePoint connectivity piece, again, is key. You want to make sure you're working with vendors that have a broad support for SharePoint versions and features. Ask about metadata and views and beyond just those out-of-the-box file sharing use cases. Are your vendors fully supporting everything you want to do and how you're going to manage and leverage that SharePoint investment? And that depth of SharePoint support from a vendor is critical. Are they committed to the space? Are they big in the space? Is that their focus? And it's also a time to look beyond mobile as well. There's vendors in the space as well that can offer SharePoint solutions on other platforms. It may not just be iPads and iPhones today where you need a SharePoint solution, but you need an offline solution for some of your desktop workers or something in the record management space. So you want to look at vendors who can give you a really diversified offering as well. It'd be interesting maybe to do another quick survey now on just SharePoint versions in use, just to see sort of where people are at in their migration along the different Microsoft versions.
Okay, so I'm going to launch another poll here for everybody. So you should be seeing another question around SharePoint version. So we'll give a minute while everyone answers. Again, if you have any comments or questions, let us know. If there's anything you want to learn more about this mobile checklist and the 5 things that Rick has discussed today, type in a comment and we'll be happy to share that with everybody. So I think that's enough. We're going to close that down and I'll share the results.
So that lands about where I would think for this group. So definitely interesting. Certainly see everyone who's at the stage of mobilizing SharePoint is well into 2010 makes sense, and a couple people dabbling into 2013 is interesting for sure. I think certainly as a vendor, we broadly support them all and are excited by some of those features in 2013. So as everyone moves forward, I think they'll be enabling some cool things.
Okay.
All right, so that was really the 5 key areas we wanted to cover as a checklist for a mobile strategy generally. When we talk about North Power again and the solution we were able to deliver, it was really an exciting offering for them and really delivered strongly on their needs to increase safety. So that evaluation process we went through with them identified those 4 key areas and some related challenges, and that led to their formation of a mobile strategy, leveraging their SharePoint backend investment, and 2 of our key products, our Briefcase Enterprise iPad app and our Colligo Administrator. So the Briefcase Enterprise iPad app really delivered on their need for security. It brings in that enterprise-grade security with hardware-based encryption and app-specific passcodes with wiping on failed attempts that gave them a reassurance along their security need to ensure that as they deployed these devices, they were able to really manage that security piece well. The automatic sync was obviously critical for them. I've stressed a couple times, and it was essential to them, given their connectivity issues and the distribution of their workers, that automatic synchronization meant that without any user intervention, they always had exactly the content they need with them on the mobile device, whether that be drawings, bulletins, anything that they needed. But also backing that up with a really easy-to-use interface for their user base. So just simple file structures, the ability to tap, search, and immediately find things allowed those field workers to instantly find exactly the content they needed for a given site that they were working on, or a given part they were working on, or a particular customer that they were visiting that day. So that easy search interface was quite powerful for them. Other features like the ability to use favorites to quickly flag things for that individual user within the app gives them a reassurance that they can quickly get to their regularly used documents fast and really address that ease of use point for them. But critical to them also was that we backed it up with our Colligo Administrator. And this is a really unique product within the industry and allows them to centrally push and administer SharePoint sites, lists, and libraries with 0 setup for the user. So the user always have exactly the content they're supposed to. That can be defined by employee, group, team, whatever breakdown you need within SharePoint, and then automatically that set of contents exactly what the user sees. And that means North Power's field workers aren't guessing at what URL they have to add to get the content they need, or adding content they don't need. It's also managed centrally and comes down automatically. It also gives a really unique remote wiping capability, so you can remove sites that a user will see, and the next time the app comes online, that content is removed from the device. You can also essentially administer application security policies and feature trimming, so that allows you to limit data leakage to email, limit printing, limit the data flow to other applications, and trim in just to the set of features you need and ensure you're strongly controlling the security of your data. Another really unique feature that the administrator brought from North Power that was critical for them was essential reporting of sync state compliance. And what that means is on the back end, they're able to see when all the devices last checked in successfully, and that allows them to reliably report on exactly what content a field worker went on site with, and that addresses a huge liability issue by backing that up with compliance. So a really powerful solution, and those 2 products we're really excited to deliver to them and really met strongly on that goal of mobilizing SharePoint for them and addressing that critical safety piece of getting their customers the right content in the right place. So I wanted to summarize now with 3 sort of key takeaways from today's webinar. So first and foremost, I can't stress enough to just identify that project and need within your organization. So look for a sponsor project, think small but plan big. So who could see the most immediate benefits for managed mobile content distribution within your company? And that's a great place to start. But plan and select your vendors around a strategy that lets you mobilize the content to all your workers and meet all your SharePoint needs. And that could be a safety for a field worker team, productivity for your sales, or increased collaboration and productivity for workers after hours or while traveling. Leverage that cheat sheet, so hopefully that mobile strategy that I walked you through is of value and helps you sort of think about the 5 categories you need to address when you're working out that mobile strategy to mobilize SharePoint securely for your mobile teams. And think carefully about vendor selection, obviously, and focus on support. Support's a really critical piece here because, you want to be able to come to the table and deliver a successful solution. And finally, plan your rollout. So phased and staged deployments are obviously best to manage risk, but go all in on those small stages. So find a way to measure success quickly for a pilot group and show an immediate ROI through surveys and traffic analysis. Pick your KPIs early and make sure you've given your pilot users everything they need to fully see the benefits. And that's another piece where we really like to help our customers out is in that pilot and deployment phase where we can offer advanced training and services to help you ensure that whatever pilot or assessment phase goes really smoothly for you. Thank you very much for your time. At this point, I'm going to pass it back to Jeff. I think we have maybe one more poll, and then we'll take some questions.
Yeah, I thought we'll just ask one more question before we get into Q&A. And so with everything you've seen today, we'd like to know if you're interested to learn a little bit more. We talked a lot about different elements, showed the product at a high level. But again, for those that might want to do a deep dive and get a bit more understanding, here's an opportunity for you to raise your hand and say, yeah, I'd love to schedule a demo and learn a little bit more. So we'll let those polls come in. Okay, great.
Thanks a lot. And yeah, I guess we'll open it up to some questions.
Oops. Okay, so we've got a bunch that came in here. Just doing a time check, we have about 3 minutes left. So maybe we'll hit on maybe 3 of those questions if we can, Rick.
All right, great. Thanks, Jeff.
The first one is, did North Power evaluate any other competing offerings?
I can't speak too directly to some of the other evaluation processes they went through because that's a bit confidential on their side. But I can say that, certainly where we differentiated ourselves from competition that was critical to them in their vendor selection was around our really rich support for automatic synchronization and offline use, and that meant that they always had the content that their field workers needed offline. But really most critical was the Colligo administrator piece and allowing them to centrally administer that to make it super easy to use for their customers with no setup. So we differentiate strongly on those things.
Okay, the next question was, how much does the product cost, or how is it licensed?
Mm-hmm. That's a great question, and it's something we definitely like to work with each individual customer on. The license tends to work out to be a per-user approach that is a perpetual license, but it's really something we're evaluating on a project-by-project basis as we bring in our services and support team and see how we can best deliver a solution for each customer.
Okay, and maybe again, looking at time, we have one more, time for one more. Does the product require any server software to communicate between the iPad and SharePoint?
That's a great question, actually, and is another piece that we differentiate strongly on that I haven't had a chance to touch on, and we don't. So essentially, our iPad talks directly to SharePoint, so there's no sort of intermediate cloud-based piece or other server that you have to install and manage to sync that content, because our iPad's securely talking directly to SharePoint, so your content remains only in 2 places, where you want it to be on SharePoint and within the client iPad device, and it gives us a strong differentiation in making it easy to manage and deploy.
Okay, that's great. Just to wrap up, then, I want to thank Rick for presenting today. I want to thank everyone for participating in today's webinar. If you'd like to learn more about the presentation or get a bit more insight or ask Rick a couple of questions, please feel free. His email is there to reach out. Again, thanks for joining today. A copy of today's presentation will be shared with all the registrants, and we look forward to speaking with you in the future.